Absolutely. And I want to mention too, that stadium has a Chick-fil-A in it, and it's can't even be used for like 17 weeks of the season because it's not open
Yeah.
on Sunday. So it's still the most hilarious thing. But that's now
Yeah.
going to move us on to go ahead, sir.
I say I got to go one for a couple games that were not on Sundays for different sports, for soccer and for college football. Not on a Sunday. Got to eat at the Chick-fil-A. Oh my gosh, let me tell you, a Chick-fil-A in a sporting event, 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. I did it at the Atlanta Braves Stadium when they were at Turner. That was great. In a football stadium, it just hits different. That's all I got to say.
God's chicken has a different feel in a spaceship, I guess you could say. But that's going to now take us into the AFC South. And after a quick wardrobe change, we're breaking out every single week one of the divisions we're going to have some type of attire for. We're going to try show a little bit of love across the divisions. Today, one of us happened to have a Colts thing, so that's what we're rolling with today. I did not have anything NFC South besides the Panthers Cup. So this is not it.
Actually, now that I think about it, I also have a Colts thing sitting here with me. I didn't realize it, but I've been drinking out of the Lucas Oil Stadium Cup.
Well, there we go. Hopefully it doesn't taste like oil. And that's going to now take us to the AFC South, which we kind of talked about before, might be the most surprisingly flipped around division. Like how 2 years ago it was absolute dirt trash. Now you can make a case it's one of the 2 or 3 most competitive divisions, especially at the top. Lots of young quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence is the old man of the division. That is all you need to know as far as the starting quarterbacks go. That's how interesting that is turn around. So we'll go ahead and get right into the AFC South. I'll go ahead and get us going. At the bottom, it is unfortunately another rough season for the Tennessee Titans. I have them at 5-12. I think they will be 1-5 in the division. I think that is where it is going to hurt them a little bit. I do like I think they're going to be difficult for a lot of teams. They're going to give a lot of teams hell, especially down the stretch. I do like Callahan as a head coach, bringing in Tyler Boyd, bringing in Calvin Ridley. I think they do have some pieces there. The trade for L'Jarius Sneed. I just think it's going to be. They're a couple years. They're still going. The offensive line was a mess last year. Will Levis, I think he's not too bad. I think he has some work to do. I don't even mind that he puts mayo in his coffee anymore. He's proven that that's like at least tolerable at this point. So I'm going to go and give them at 5-12. I think they're going to be competitive in a lot of these games, like we talked about. I just think it's a bit of an uphill trek for them, unfortunately. So we're going to put Tennessee at about 5-12. I'm going to move on now to number 3, just to keep us rolling here. I have the Jacksonville Jaguars finishing at 9-8. Sorry, I have them at 8-9. 8-9, excuse me. I can't read. 8-9, 3-3 in the division. They're going to beat the Colts in Jacksonville because that's what they do every year since the dawn of time now. They're going to beat Houston at least once because I think they have Trevor Lawrence is a very good quarterback. He just hasn't quite shown it a lot yet. Statistically speaking, has not looked great outside of an 8-game stretch. Travis Etienne, I think, has really come into his own, especially last year. Doug Peterson, good head coach. Gabe Davis, Brian Thomas Jr., very interesting set of receivers they have going there. I am curious to see how that is going to all work together and fit. Evan Ingram had a good solid year last year. Defensively, they have some pieces. There's something missing with that team. I don't know what it is, but if it feels like they're just missing that. A lot of those games they should have won last year. They were 8-3. I know Trevor Lawrence got banged up, but they plummeted after that. And in a lot of the games even before that, I'm going to put them at 8-9 because I think the rest of the division got a little bit better. Sitting at the second spot in the division, I have the Colts at 10-7. Last year, everything possible could have gone wrong for them, and they finished 9-8. You had your starting quarterback go down. You had your starting running back play 4.5 games. You had your starting receiver miss 2 games. You had your backup running back miss games. You had your entire secondary miss games, basically. And you still pulled out 9 wins. Gardner Minshew was 5 yards away from leading to the playoffs, arguably. A drop pass from a third-string running back and a potential field goal. They were in the thick of it. Their secondary still scares me. There's a lot of holes. If they sign Justin Simmons, I might flip them and who you clearly can see is going to be the Texans at number 1 based on process of elimination. I might swap them if you tell me they're going to sign Justin Simmons. I love the A.D. Mitchell pick. We've talked about that might have been arguably the best pick in the first 2 or 3 rounds. Getting a guy who every mock draft Monday, we had him in the first round. Every single time. And you get him in the second round. Latu. Very good if he stays healthy. Very gifted. Probably the best natural pass rush in the draft. The concern was injuries, and Dallas Turner's a freak. That's kind of hard to compete with. So I'm going to put the Colts at 10-7. There's a lot to like there. The secondary scares me. If Anthony Richardson plays 15 games and it's not 15 in a row, then misses the rest of the season. Like if he just plays 15 games, maybe takes a week off here or there. I think they're going to be dynamic. There's going to be some ups and downs. He's basically still essentially a rookie. So I anticipate we're going to see some of those rookie bumps here and there. He still misses a fair amount of throws that you'd like him to complete, which he will learn in time, I think. But at the same time, he's a 22-year-old who has 8 quarters of NFL experience. We're not going to get too far ahead of myself with it, but there's a lot to like about this team in general, which is going to take me now to the top of the division. I have the Houston Texans at 11-6, also 4-2 in the division. They won a lot of close games last year. CJ Stroud was awesome in taking care of the ball. His touchdown interception ratio was incredible. He had some high flying games that, like what he did to Tampa Bay, 5 touchdowns, 300 plus yards was awesome. I think adding Stephon Diggs is going to be great for them. I think he's going to give them another dynamic weapon. Nico Collins really stepped up. Tank Dell, when he's not being asked to play fullback on the goal line, was outstanding. Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson on your edges is terrifying. Kamari Lassiter coming in. It's a defensive back pick too. There's a good amount to like here. I like D'Amico Ryans. He's very good at coach. I think they're going to the Colts, Jaguars, and Texans is going to be one heck of a matchup, assuming all things equal, stay healthy. And I think Houston has a heap of expectations with Stephon Diggs coming in, which I think anyone who's looking at 13, 14 wins, I think they'll be disappointed. But they get the Colts secondary twice a year. They get the Titans twice. They get Jaguars. They're going to go 4-2. They're a really good team, and I think they're going to make a lot of noise. They feel like the Bengals a couple of years ago, kind of before the injury started killing them. Maybe not quite to the same extent, but they feel like a really good team. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to have Houston at 11-6, assuming Justin Simmons doesn't come to the Colts. We might make them 11-6 too. But this is what we're looking at for right now with the AFC South. Kelcey, I know yours is going to be a little bit different, but I think we're not too far off. I think we have a little more similarities here than we did in the NFC South. There won't be 3 teams with the same record.
Yeah, no, there's none of that. But there are a couple teams that have similar records. But yeah, I do like your picks. It makes a lot of sense. I have a little differing opinion here on some of these teams, and if I had to give a reason why, we'll wait and see about that. But I do think this is my optimistic thought on the AFC South. But as we all know, if you've watched the show any point in time, I maybe not am the biggest optimist in the world when it comes to football predictions, unless it's the Lions winning or Tim Patrick being the best receiver in fantasy football, if you get to stay healthy.
Which is the reason why the optimism is waned.
Yeah. So
the origin story.
Especially don't let me talk about the Cowboys. But yeah, no, this is I think the AFC South. This makes a lot of sense. This is a very optimistic pick from the ideal situation that could happen in the AFC South. Maybe most ideal would be the Jaguars getting into playoff contention there too. But I do think this makes a lot of sense for me. If everybody stays healthy in the South, this is a very fun division to watch. Unlike the NFC South, where maybe not so fun for those that aren't in it. But I think the AFC South would be a lot of fun to watch.
These teams will be killing each other to rise to the top, as opposed to the other one where he said they'll be fighting to drown last. That's why I think it's going to be very interesting. But just to make a quick recap of what I had for my picks, we have the Titans at 5-12. We have the Jaguars third at 8-9. The Colts second at 10-7. And Houston taking the division again at 11-6. And before we jump into you, Kelcey, a fun little thing to look at with the AFC South. A few years ago, the Titans won the division, number 1 overall record. Next year, they had a 6-game lead at about the midway point, choked it to an upstart Jaguars team that got on a roll. Last year, the Jaguars, coming off the division lead, had an outstanding lead and added a new star receiver, choked it away to an upstart team down the stretch. This year, maybe Houston does the same thing. New receiver, dominant lead. Maybe they lose it to an upstart team coming up. I don't know. Maybe that's just because I decided to wear the Colts attire for today. We're trying to plug a path for them. But you know what? I'm just saying anything can happen. The AFC South is going to be fun. But Kelcey, the AFC South floor is yours.
Yeah. Well, you kind of stole a lot of my thunder here, man. What are you doing? You're killing me here. But you know what? I do agree. I do think that the AFC South is going to be a very interesting division to watch. You'd never know what's going to happen from week to week. So just starting it off, ripping the Band-Aid off, worst team in the division for me, Tennessee Titans. I don't think anybody's surprised where they end up. For me, it's 6-11 instead of DJ's 5-10. 5-12. But I think there's pieces here. But you lose Derrick Henry. You got to figure out what you're going to do. You don't have a power back anymore. Are you going to use Tony Pollard as a power back? Is that going to really succeed for you? I don't know. There are pieces of this team, though, that do work. I think Will Levis, as long as he's not trying to play corner against a small child, should be fine. But beyond that, don't get him near coffee either.
Or bananas.
Yeah, or bananas. But I do think this team is going to be relatively okay. As you mentioned, bringing in Tyler Boyd, reuniting him with his OC, I think is huge in this one. And And I think the defense is still going to be okay in the long run. They have pieces that need to be filled. Their defensive line needs to get stronger. Please don't yell at me, please. I'm not the guy. I do think the Titans have some work to do, but it's not as bad as what we just talked about with the AFC South. I mean, they walk over to the NFC South. If they walk over to the NFC South right now, well, they're second in the division. So not going to be the worst thing in the world for the Titans finishing 6-11, but it's obvious this team needs to build on their own
Just
sake.
keep camera phones away from the lettuce.
Yeah, exactly. So moving up the list, we're going to go to number 3. And DJ, you kind of stole my thunder with that one with the comment of maybe the Texans won't be able to keep up. Well, here it is. Texans 8-9, because I do have them starting off hot. They're going to start off like gangbusters. They're going to beat some teams they shouldn't beat. They're going to beat teams they should beat. But in the end, expectations carry a lot of weight. And a second-year coach and a second-year OC and a second-year quarterback with a very demanding receiver who I love to death in Stephon Diggs, and 2 young receivers in Nico Collins and Tank Dell that demand time, and a second-year defensive edge that is fantastic, but is he that guy? And then a Daniil Hunter who is crying out for wins and success in the playoffs. All of those come with expectations. All of those come with weight. Can you carry that through the season? I don't know. We have yet to see it proven. And no offense, CJ Stroud, but Ohio State quarterbacks do not have a lot of success in the NFL. Just what it is. There is no other thing spoken there than facts. It is just how it works for Ohio State quarterbacks nowadays. And I hope you break that. And I hope Justin Fields breaks that. But you know what? For now, year 2, sophomore slump. I don't know if last year was a fluke or if that was serious. I know the talent's there. But did you just catch people off guard like a pitcher coming in for the first time in his first run through a division? I don't know. But that's my theory. That's the running theory I have. History has proven that's a thing to run off of. So for me, the Texans here, 8-9, coming up third in the division. I do have them losing to some upstart teams. Well, at least one upstart team. But it's not this team in number 2. Number 2, hate this stadium, but I think this team is pretty good. The Jacksonville Jaguars, I also have it 8-9. They are literally just edging out the Texans because of division record. I have them 4-2 in the division. Winning both games against the Texans helps them out there. But look, Duval is maybe not all the way there, but Trevor Lawrence, there's nothing to scoff about. But no quarterback who's ever been paid the most amount of money in the offseason comes into the next season and wins his division. Who knew? That's a fun, weird, stupid fact that doesn't make sense, but it also makes a lot of sense. Because again, guess what comes with all that money? Expectations. And we all know, bags, a lot of bags. But expectations always result in issues for guys, especially younger guys. So Jacksonville Jaguars, 8-9. Young team, fun to watch. I just don't know if they're there. That defense still has a lot of work as well. And without further ado, my number 1, if you haven't figured out by now, your process of elimination skills need work. But that is the Indianapolis Colts. 11-6 with a healthy AR5 now. Anthony Richardson, I've said that wrong multiple times on the show. I'm sorry, Anthony. But look, I think when he's playing, he's an absolute stud. If you don't know, go watch our prediction. Go watch DJ's conversation about best fantasy football quarterbacks, and you'll understand why I'm a big fan of Anthony Richardson, because a lot of what DJ said, I totally agree with. I think he's young. I think he's talented. When he's playing in the game, this team is different because their receivers, their number 1 receiver specifically, struggles to create separation. He's a big body receiver, but he does struggle to create separation. But you need a quarterback who can just rear back and throw a dart to somebody and get them open. Anthony Richardson can do that. He can get Michael Pittman open and let Michael Pittman work with the ball in his hands. There's 2 other receivers out there that he can throw wide open down the field. just give him a chance. Give him a chance to just unleash that rocket of an arm. You'll be amazed to see what you can. And then, by the way, he has a healthy Jonathan Taylor in that lineup and a healthy offensive line. I don't think I can reiterate how important it is to have a healthy offensive line, and especially this offensive line led by a healthy Quentin Nelson. Because say what you will, last year, there's no way that dude was healthy. He was not Quentin Nelson. That was not the guy. That was a joke of Quentin Nelson. in the grand scheme of his career. I'd never have seen a guy kind of have that kind of dip and not be injured. So I think this team fully healthy. Good luck offensively just keeping up with this team. But there's always a but in one of these Southern divisions, it seems like. This defense, corners especially. Safeties, relatively okay as long as they can stay healthy. But corners, how are you going to keep somebody locked up? Are you going to go back to your old Tampa 2 zone style? It works, but do you have the personnel to make it work? I don't know if they're there defensively to have a long run and everything, but I think in their division, I have them going 4-2. I think they can pull it out. That's 4 wins. You just got to win 7 more, and you have 18 games to do it. I guess in this case, you'd have 14 more games to do it. So you have to win 50% of your games outside of your division based off what I have to get to 11 wins. It doesn't seem very hard, right? Especially for a team as talented offensively as they are and who has the talented players defensively, just not enough of them. Can some of the young players pan out? We'll see. But that's where I have this AFC South looking like. So, yeah. DJ, now you've seen the Band-Aid ripped off. What do you think?
Well, I guess I probably shouldn't have spoiled it for you with the Texans. I forgot. Like similar minds that think in abstract ways, I guess, think alike when we look at these random things. But Titans, we agree on the same thing. Jaguars, kind of the same thing. Houston, I am very curious. Obviously, I like CJ Stroud a little bit more than you do, so I do think last year wasn't the fluke, but I do agree that there could be that sophomore slump too. There could be the expectations. There are those, remember the Dream Team Eagles? Like every year there's a team with high expectations that doesn't quite meet them. So maybe that is their team. It's definitely not out of the realm of possibility. And obviously focusing on the Colts one due to the fact that I chose their team for the shirtsy, and because you have them winning the division for the first time in over a decade. I am very curious to see what happens with Jonathan Taylor and AR in the same backfield. They took one snap together in the same backfield last year. So I am curious to see what dynamic that brings.
Didn't it go for 15 yards on the one snap?
Yeah, it was only like 2 or 3 yards because Zach Moss played most of that game. That was JT's first game.
That's right, Zach Moss, yep.
In fact, I think it might have been a throw, actually. I don't even think it was a handoff. Too.
I
know Zach Moss took a run 50 yards to the house on my fantasy bench because saw JT was back. But
that's the play I was thinking of.
Yeah, I'm not bitter. But anyway, I also do really want to see what they could do offensive line-wise now that they've added some depth pieces to. Like, I love the Tanner Bortolini draft pick. He broke Jason Kelce's 3-cone record at the Combine. So he brings you another level on the interior offensive line. Like, he can move and get downfield. We saw what Shane Steichen's done with Jalen Hurts that year they went to the Super Bowl. He was there with Phillip Rivers and Justin Herbert, so we can build around all. We saw in 8.5 quarters of Anthony Richardson how creative and mastermind he could be with the run game, the motions, the counters, the blocking schemes. Michael Pittman laid a dude out on his 1 touchdown run against Houston when Anthony Richardson came around the side. Ironically, the play he got a concussion on. That the amount of fun he is able to drop, and he didn't even get to unleash that playbook last year. Because Gardner Minshew is not running that quarterback keeper off a backside screen. He's not. Gardner Minshew is fun.
He will, but it's not going to be good.
They're not drawing it up, that's for sure. They're not going to draw it up for him the same way. So I do think there's a lot to be unleashed if AR could take some of those next steps. He does have the accuracy's got to improve. He does miss a lot of just the chain moving plays. He missed a lot. We saw in the first half against the Rams when they were down 24-0. Second half, he was superhero. He was 2015 Cam at points. But the problem is you can't follow behind in those games. So I'm very curious to see his development, see if Stroud develops as well, see what happens with Trevor Lawrence. Like last year, obviously the injury, the rookie year, we always joke about and we always say his rookie year, he is not held accountable for that because of the Urban Meyer factor.
I can't blame anybody for that.
So I can't ever use his career statistics against him because of that. But even that year they went to the playoffs, the first half he was meh, second half he was outstanding. Last year he was early on. He had like 11 touchdowns, 11 turnovers. It was Travis Etienne going ballistic. And then the back half he was hurt. So I just need to see what is going on. You gave him one of the top 3 highest paid contracts in the NFL, or it was at the time, and now it's been broke twice. I just got to see what does that mean. Like, those are a lot of questions, and this is a fun one to look out for. On paper, it should be very competitive at the top, but every time we say that, someone's going to run away with this at 12-5, and second place is going to be 7-10.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And let me be clear. I don't hate CJ Stroud, just for everybody who thinks I'm a CJ Stroud hater. I am not. I am just not high on Ohio State quarterbacks. Again, if nobody knows my complaints with Ohio State, it's the word "the," and you can't copyright that. Stop trying. It's obnoxious and annoying. And then when everybody else says it, you're like, oh, you can't say that. But when you do it, it's like, oh, this is great. Anyways, but no, I think CJ Stroud as a talent. Yeah, CJ Stroud as a talent is a high quality talent. I think he has all the ability to be the next great quarterback, really dominating this division and dominate. I'd even say top 5 quarterback in the NFL. But there's always a regression in year 2. I have yet to see a quarterback who has excelled in year 1 not step back in year 2. And it may not even really be a step back, but it might just be a plateau for a year before he figures it out. And that's part of this. That's why you have young quarterbacks is you have the ability to go out and show out year 1. That's never the goal of a franchise, is to have a quarterback do what CJ Stroud did. That's the holy crap, he just surprised us all moment. That's what you hope for. That's what you hope in 3 years down the road. But you always have a 3-year plan with these young guys. And CJ Stroud broke year 1. Year 2 is, all right, now he's got to really figure out how to take the success he had and implement his own personal talents, which I think he has the brains and the IQ to do it. And he has the physical talents to do it as well. It's just a matter of getting those pieces together and aligning them. And again, we talked about the close games. The Texans had a lot of close games last year. They came out on the winning end because CJ was able to get them through that. Can that again happen? It's hard to say. Fate doesn't have that kind of friendly terms on their side. But I think there's a lot of talent there. I just year 2 there's too many questions with year 2s and coaches, quarterbacks, defensive edges who've had great years in year 1. And there's far too many issues that follow up in sophomore years. And again, compounding that with Stephon Diggs, as much as I love him, I think it's safe you can love somebody and love the ability they have and safely say, well, maybe he is a little too demanding. When you're getting 6 catches for 100 yards and you're still complaining you're not getting the ball enough, I don't know what to do with you anymore. But yeah, I think they're talented. I just don't know if they're there yet, personally.
What I will say with the quarterback thing, to go back in time, if we're going to find one who had an outstanding year 1 and then actually either picked up on it in year 2 or matched it, you go with Patrick Mahomes, who kind of cheated because he had the year to sit, or you go back to Andrew.
Yeah, I don't count Patrick at all in that. But
then you go back to basically Andrew Luck, which technically, statistically, yards were down, but everything else was better. But that's how far back you're going, and that's an anomaly. We don't count Andrew Luck. That's an unfair comparison to everybody. That was ridiculous. But I agree with you. That's a very interesting, because if they do stagger, I think Jacksonville and Indianapolis are right there to jump them if they stagnate. I think those
and
two
they
teams
don't.
are ready to
and let's be clear, they don't have the schedule to get away with stagnating.
They don't have that last place schedule again. That definitely helps. Yeah. Now you got a first place schedule.
Yeah, and that's the problem when you do well in year 1, is you kind of kick the can down the road for fixing the issues you just had, which we talked about with the Jets. I think that's one of the things that the Jets, fell victim to, is they had too much early success with Zach Wilson, and then they're like, all right, we can do this. Okay, we're good. It crashed and burned quickly. And I think I don't think it's going to be as bad with the Texans, but I do think there's always concerns of a year 2 sophomore slump for both coaches and players, because coaches-wise, I mean, this is something we don't normally talk about, but coaches-wise in year 2, they have twice as much pressure, because now your team excelled with a bunch of rookies. This is not a small amount of rookies on this team, and first-year players with the team. I mean, we're talking about, of their 22 starters, I believe 12 of them were first-year players for the Texans last year. And that's insane. You don't have this level of success with that many new pieces into your team. It takes time to gel and succeed. They did it right off the rip, and now you have to come into year 2 and you have to figure out how to be better. And that's the question I have, is how good they're really going to be in year 2. And again, I'm not saying they're going to take a huge step back, but I think they just have to kind of temper your expectations this year for long-term success. And I think that's something that gets missed in today's game. We don't give teams that opportunity to succeed that way. We just 8-9, not good enough. You're done. Get out of here. When in reality, 8-9 with this team is what we kind of expected in year 2 when this all started last year, before last year started. 8-9 this year would have been perfectly on schedule. So, yeah, this one I could probably dive into a lot, but I just think there's too many questions for sophomore slumps for the Texans. And I say that knowing full well I literally just gave the Colts an 11-6 record and said, oh, yeah, they're going to win the division with technically a year 2 quarterback in Anthony Richardson, but kind of an unknown commodity to the rest of the league.
Also, a technically year 1 quarterback, too, 6-1 and half a dozen. I'll also add, too, They talk about year 2 players. The entire league has film on them too, so they get an off season to watch them. They have an off season of watching the coaching tendencies too. When they go for what they like to do in this third and situation. It's awesome. They kept Bobby Slowick and the entire coaching staff. That is amazing. There was a lot more good with that, but some of the negative, quote unquote negative, is tendency wise. You got to break your own tendencies, and if you break your tendencies, does that hinder you? Do you trying to change what you did well? Like, it's little things, and obviously if they're good at it. That we say the same thing with Ben Johnson and Lions, and they have not missed a beat. Andy, like, they're good. They will figure it out, but there is the possibility that shoot, what worked last year, that doesn't work as well this year. So it's very,
and I think it's worth mentioning the difference between the Lions here and the Texans is Jared Goff.
They were bad longer. They earned their way to. They took longer too. And Goff wasn't a child when they came.
But I was saying Goff had success, and so he came in with success at the pro level. Did he win a Super Bowl? No. But was he successful? Yes. It's absolutely he was successful under McVay. Anybody who says otherwise is blind. And that success breeds a calmness and breeds an ability, because nobody's worried about your tape anymore because you're in year 6 and 7 versus year 2 is really, like you said, the tendencies. What do you do on 3rd down and 7 when you're getting blitzed on the strong side, but somebody comes free on the weak side? Who's your first hot read? That's going to be a defensive coordinator's key to try to get an easy interception and take it back to the house for 6. Those are all pieces and parts of this whole thing, and that's something that naturally you can't really help but fix through practice. And by practice, I don't mean like actual practice in game in practice times. I mean literally like game time, crash and burn practice, because that's the only way you're going to mentally be able to pick it up and fix it, because your coaches aren't trying to pick you off in this situation in practice and take it to the house. Your coaches are just trying to prepare you for the game. The other team's coaches, their money and their family's life stake are on the lines here, and they're trying to get your that ball back into their own end zone and get 7 points, or 6 points plus an extra point. But that's the big difference in year 2. And this is something like subject wise, I would die on a hill of that. It might not even be a regression. He could be just fine, but it's gonna look like a regression because he didn't excel like he did last year. And everybody's going to be upset. And Texans fans, please don't be upset with this guy, because he is going to absolutely ball out in 3 years. We're talking one of the best young talents in quarterback. Just listen to him talk about the position. You're going to be understanding of how good he can be. And if year 2 is not great, that's okay, because year 3, 4, and 5, you'll be more than happy he plays in Houston. Let me just be honest.
Sometimes the results does not equate to the process as well, too. He could be the exact same as last year, but maybe it ends up 2 losses here as opposed to 2 wins. Like, it can't be, results does not always necessarily equal process, if that makes sense too. Like, you do everything the same, but can't be a results-based analysis. But we can have a full separate episode on this. We've already gone over time, so Kelcey, I'm gonna let you go ahead and recap your AFC South for us real quick.
Yeah, real quick though, just to recap the AFC South from the bottom to the top. We have the Titans coming in at 6-11 and 4th place, and then the Texans 8-9, just kind of falling off midway through the season, losing to the Jaguars, who come in 2nd by divisional record, head-to-head record, who also finish at 8-9 for the Jaguars, and number 1, the Indianapolis Colts, 11-6, winning this division. Luck and miracle, call it what you will, but it is what it is.
First time in 11 years they hoist up the division title, and once again, as we saw for the NFC South, we do have the fan vote. So going from the bottom to the top, they have 7-10 for the Tennessee Titans, 9-8 for the Jaguars, 10-7 for the Colts, and 12-5 for the Houston Texans. So looks like same order as me, just a little bit different record as well. So that's a lot
friendlier with those wins there, huh?
A lot friendlier as well too. Like, they definitely have some very competitiveness throughout. But